Hello, my name is Allison Merker Garner, and I am the creator of Musical Minds. Welcome. And this video is on performance anxiety. Performance anxiety is a complicated issue. That's something that's fascinated me all my life. I've had spots of it myself, being a violinist and a pianist and a speaker, but I've never really gone through the trauma of it. And I think that depending on what is causing it, what the root cause of your performance anxiety is, that is how we go about treating it. So let's look at the different kinds. You can have performance anxiety that is all consuming. You think about an event and you immediately are terrified. This is something that's anticipatory, isn't it? But why is it anticipatory? There's probably a background story to that. You're actually bringing up a reaction that you had in the past that was related and was traumatic for you. This is the worst case scenario for a stage fright, isn't it? You just freeze, or your constant activity. Either way, it's a trauma response. And trauma responses can be healed. They can be turned around. In this kind of response, we look at the somatic experiencing of that. So, for example, if you are somebody that is frozen when you get stage fright, you feel like your feet are planted on the floor and you can't move your limbs, that kind of deer in the headlights frozen feeling, then that is a response that comes from the reptilian brain. What does that mean? It means that is a survival response. You're playing dead. You are so worried, so anxious that you freeze to survive. Think of an animal out in the wild. And what happens when an animal out in the wild freezes and plays dead? The predator is no longer interested in him. The predator is only interested in a living being. So it is a survival response. It is our oldest response to fear. And I mention that because it is normal. There's nothing wrong with you. If you're somebody that suffers from that kind of response, it's sure frustrating and it sure can be limiting, but know that your body is doing what it's supposed to do. You can't get mad at it. It's doing what it's supposed to do. What you can do is learn the ways to turn that around so that you don't have that response. And that's rewiring the brain and the neural system, but it's doable. And that's something that I work with people on, and with great success. I have some training in EMDR, though I'm not licensed in it. I am certified in brain spotting, which is a more current way of approaching trauma from a completely clinical point of view. There are also somatic ways, polyvagal theory and that kind of thing, that I use a lot to support that change, that transformation, so that it is sustainable. We don't want it just for one event. We want it forever. And that's highly important. So getting the body involved, getting the mind involved, right? So let's say that you are not someone that gets frozen in a situation like that. Instead, you can play, but you're not enjoying it. You're thinking, how many more minutes do I have to endure this? Right? You're just trying to get through. You're really working at getting from point A to point C in one piece. So if you're that kind of performance anxiety, notice your somatic symptoms. What do you notice? Does your heart rate go up? Do your thoughts begin to race? Is your breathing shallow or deep? Are you shaking or sweating profusely? All of these kinds of bodily responses are also normal, and they are more from the middle brain, not the reptilian, but the mammalian brain. What does that mean? It means that we have the response to flee, to fight, to get out of there. Everything that's being activated is being activated so that we can run. We want to run for cover. And that's what's happening to your body, is having that response. It's preparing for you to get out there. And once again, your body's doing what it feels like it's supposed to do. We're neurologically wired to stay alive in whatever way that will happen. So what do you do with that? What do you do if you have that activated way of responding? And there are mindset exercises that I give to people that help them do that, that will support a different way of responding that's more helpful. We also do resourcing so that you start to associate, like a Pavlovian response, a certain gesture or touch or thought with something exciting and happy. So that's another way. We may titrate in some resourcing so that we bring that anxiety down to where we can start to think and not react. And breathing. Even just your breath makes a huge difference in being able to have agency over your reactions to something. So let's say you haven't done any mindful exercises, you've not done any of the things that I offer to practice on a daily basis to gain more agency over your unwanted emotions. Say you just walk out on stage without any background and your hands start to shake. What do you think? Do you think, oh no? Or do you think, oh, I can expect that. It always happens. It always happens when I walk out on stage. There they go again. And guess what happens when you just allow it in and recognize it and allow it? Get a little curious about it. I wonder why that always happens when I get out on stage. And it becomes less potent. It's not a big deal. And just by doing that, you're mitigating the effects of your anxiety. And then if you take a big, deep breath and exhale slowly a few times, just allowing your breath to come out very slowly, it also activates the part of your neural system that calms. Your parasympathetic nervous system responds. It may not lower the anxiety level, but it brings up the calm and meets it. neutralizes it a little bit. So you can do things right now without practicing. Of course, if you do the practicing kinds of things, you start to actually rewire and do it on a permanent basis. So that's what I would recommend, but you can still do things. And then what if you're the kind of person that gets nervous for a performance and you play well? You actually play fine. Your hands may or may not shake. You may feel a little stiff, but you're fine. You do okay, but you don't enjoy it. Is that okay? Is that okay for you? That's the first question. It may be okay for you. Maybe that's enough. If it's not okay for you and you feel like, oh, I really want to enjoy this, then there are things you can do to create the space to enjoy it. And those things take practice. We practice to practice, and we can practice to perform. We can practice to learn the technique, to learn the notes. We can practice to let go of worrying about that and thinking about that. We can practice toward connection. We can practice toward joy. We can practice toward ease. But it has to be intentional. It's not going to just happen because we've spent hours doing the other way of practice because we needed to. So we need a certain amount of time practicing the way we're going to want to play when we perform. And that's something I work with people on as well. And I've created an approach and a practice designed for that very thing so that you can find the ways in your practice to really hook into that, to access that when you need it and when you want it. So performance anxiety has many layers or not. It can come from a number of different sources, or it can just be an event, single event. It can be a trauma or not. Depending on what it is for you would be the definition of our approach and practice toward overcoming it. The mindset is pretty much the same, but I use techniques and practices that are supportive of the kind of mindset you need to be able to create the space for change. And that's what we're doing. No amount of affirmations, no amount of constructive thinking is going to permanently change your neural system. It has to take more. It has to take your brain. It has to take your nervous system. It has to take your body. It has to take your mind, not just your brain, but your mind. It has to take your heart. Sometimes just saying to yourself, I'm going to play from my heart in this and not from my head, can make a huge shift in what comes out of your instrument and your experience of it too. So we work with all those things so that you have agency and you have sustainability in that transformation. So hopefully that illuminates the things that I do for performance anxiety and what you can already do now toward making those changes what you want. Thank you.